You know, sort of against conventional wisdom, I truly believe that the best thing I have done for this is letting it dry out.
Yeah, I mean, I think initially that definitely makes sense.
Um, but yeah, no, she's good. Actually, it's looking so much better just just with that.
Good. Well, as
So
long as it's like not causing you a bunch of pain and stuff, that's really like
no, see, so what I'm doing is like this isn't even to like absorb blood, right? But I put one of those finger condoms over this, and it's like a little pillow. So if I do bump something or poke something, I can't even feel it at all. So
yeah, it's like your airbag.
yeah, it's like I do have that one moment of like pain of having to squeeze to get the cover on, but then after that, it's
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, fingers.
yeah, no. And it's like I know it's such a teeny injury, but there's so many nerves in the tip of your finger.
I would not call it a teeny injury when you chop off a bit of yourself, no matter where it is. And I don't feel like that's a hot take.
No. Okay, but speaking of hot takes, just kind of, and I'm gonna mention this on the thing, but both JFK and Marilyn Monroe are Geminis.
Yeah, that tracks. Um,
So
I'm not gonna address it in the podcast, but I got this bee venom balm, and like, look at me raising my eyebrows.
yeah.
There's like, it's called Better Than Botox.
Okay. So it's bee venom.
Bee venom, yeah, and it's like it helps basically work like a light version of Botox to kind of like deaden the muscles just a little bit. So I'm using it at the corners of my eyes and on my forehead because I have hit the point where I'm starting to get kind of like a permanent line on my forehead.
Oh, honey. No. I mean, yes. Not that I've noticed, but the same.
Yeah, we're just hitting that age. So I follow this herbalist on Instagram and she's been like, and this is like her most popular product. And I got it. And honestly, I am like shooketh.
Shooketh. But
Shooketh.
but no, the other day I was like, my eyebrows are relaxed. What is this?
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, for me, it was the worst was when I noticed I was getting like the 11s and like, unless I gua shawed, they were just there. And I'm like, I feel like those are like the I have anxiety wrinkles.
Mm.
It's like, yeah, I just like am constantly apparently scrunching the top half of my face. And
Yeah,
I
it's the
notice it sometimes at work. I'm like, why are my eyebrows raised and squished together? And I'm like, oh, it's just because my anxiety is just happening. But I live in Los Angeles and I don't want to have more wrinkles than the fucking like elderly women I work with. So, bee venom.
bee venom. No, well, when that wasp stung me on my third eye, I was kind of high off it. I'm like, maybe we should just be getting stung by bees and wasps.
Well, you know that the way Gwyneth Paltrow treated her C-section scar was with bee venom, but instead of topical application, she went to a place where they literally just like stung her with bees on the
Oh,
scar.
and love that.
Right. She's fucking crazy. Oh, on a
What a psycho.
very different note, look at my Totoro sweater.
Oh my god, Totoro!
Little Totoro. How cute is that?
That is so cute.
I'm like, that's right. I am Twee. This is from Hot Topic. Uh anyway, I am excited though because I have like I got this amazing journal that I'm going to talk about in my When Did I Feel Magical. Look at this. Look at this fucking like wolf journal.
Oh wow.
And the paper, it's like handmade paper.
Oh, wow.
And it smells like a head shop.
Ain't she a beaut?
She is. Because I got, I love the Hecate's Garden book. I got finally Keeping Her Keys, which is like basically it's a 13-month course introduction
Oh, sure.
to Hecate and witchcraft. And so I was like, when I saw this, I was like, oh, Little Miss associated with hounds. This journal is perfect for my year and a day with Hecate. So, plus conjuring with cannabis.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so excited about this book. It's so fun. It's like there's so many recipes in here, but then I really like that she has like a moon alcohol recipe made with rubbing alcohol for like cleaning your bongs and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Like,
I was
how
like,
cute is that?
that is so cute.
Crystal moon bong water blessing spell. Like that's what this book is.
Wow.
A trimming chant.
That's so California.
I mean, I know.
That's so,
Equipment cleansing and blessing for your grinder.
uh-huh.
Like, also it goes through like the holidays and it calls them high holidays. And it talks about like rituals for each of the Sabbats with fucking pot. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. Like, it is made for weed witches. And I'm like, as someone who doesn't drink, I feel like there's so much stuff around like wine and spirits, but I'm like, I don't drink. And then this was like, well, here's a solution.
No, well, I personally, I feel like anytime there is like wine or libations, I think weed is a perfectly good like 1-to-1 substitute.
Oh, I mean, me too. I just feel like I feel so seen.
Oh, no, yeah. It's validating. It's validating.
It's so validating. But yeah, I just like I love it. Like, it's really fun. There's this thing called For Sticky Work. It's a chant for cleansing things that are covered in that sticky icky
Oh my
from
God.
your cannabis. But yeah, and it also talks about like this has like seed blessing rituals and stuff for like growing cannabis. But I also feel like most people don't realize how fucking hard it is to like actually grow cannabis. And I don't have that kind of time in my life.
No.
I'm like, you
No.
know how bad spider mites are with regular plants? Okay, now just give them a smorgasbord, and that's spider mites on cannabis plants.
Well, and here's the thing. There's that joke about, I've spent $200 at Home Depot and 9 weeks to grow 30 cents worth of tomatoes in my yard.
Yeah.
It's like multiply that by 10.
Yeah.
And there's
especially now that like cannabis is so much more affordable.
Right. But yeah, like with all the no, and if you don't buy the crazy fertilizer, you are gonna end up with like a couple grams of weed, maybe, hopefully.
That you have to like fucking battle royale spider mites for. Because cannabis plants, like fucking spider mites love them. And spider mites are notoriously hard to get rid of on regular plants, let alone a plant that is like a giant sticky trap.
Right.
So anyway, so I figure we can get into it. I guess we can do it like we did with Taurus, where I do the plant up top. And then
yeah.
Kind of get into the funsies. I'm like, I loved looking at the botanical description of lion's mane, and I'm like, once it's trimmed, it kind of looks like hairy testicles. Have you like you've seen lion's mane?
I've seen lion's mane.
They look like testicles.
Yeah. But they start out looking like a koosh ball.
Yeah, they do. They do. My
What
favorite
if
comment.
what if real testicles started out looking like that?
I feel like they'd be a lot more interesting. I did watch this funny like reel on Instagram where someone was like, they did this entire, it was like, what makes testicles beautiful? And they talked about this huge survey they did, and they're like, the answer is nothing. It doesn't
No,
matter.
nobody likes them. Nobody
Nobody
likes them.
thinks like, oh, that's a gorgeous pair of balls.
I would say I mean I did see what you're talking about, and my response to that is that evenness and size. Evenness,
I,
evenness and size, because the whole I mean, but really everyone's balls kind of look like a chicken model.
yeah, it's like some are less offensive than others.
Right. Some are less offensive, but even the ones that are less offensive than others, there's still a lot of base problems here.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a
So
weird
the first of
evolutionary
which is
choice.
the texture of that skin.
Like, why do you feel like an old person between your legs?
um,
Okay. Well, I guess on that note,
on that
uh,
note,
do you want to start or should I start?
here you go, you go.
Okay. Hello and welcome to Wands and Fronds, the bi-weekly through Labor Day podcast, where we talk about magic, herbalism, and more. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Nick.
And we're your co-hosts with the most. So y'all, we're kicking off this very special season midway through the season. But I'm gonna be talking about lion's mane, and then I'll let Nick get into the like juicy topic of the week.
So we're doing Magic for Geminis, part 2 of the Zodiac series. Part 3.
Yeah.
Y'all,
Yeah.
this is one where we're recording in the morning. So I don't know what day it is. I don't know what time it is, and I don't know what part of the Zodiac we're on, but I know it's Gemini.
We're talking about Gemini. Y'all also maybe hear like more background noise for me because we are recording in the morning. So Eric is actually getting ready to go to work upstairs. So I'm downstairs with Willow, and all of the overcast craziness from outside has, I think, made the animals a little wonky because the sun is just not working in Los Angeles this month. Like at all. Normally, May gray and June gloom like burns off part of the way through the day. It almost never does this season. Like it's like
We're
living in fucking Seattle.
No, we're going through that in Texas too. Like I looked at the 10-day forecast, and there's literally some rain every day.
Yeah. We went to walk Willow this morning and it was just misting. And I was like, well, all right. I guess we're not taking a full mile walk with her because I don't want to look like a drowned rat by the time I get home.
Oh no.
But what are you going to do? So, but before we get into it and before we talk about like monkey ball looking mushrooms and like the other Mercury sign, let's talk about when you felt magical this week.
Well, I did have a very nice moment this week. I sent you the picture of that BC sticker.
Yes. Oh my God. That was like a fucking throwback.
But it was so funny because I really did feel that, it's like time is so circular, and it's like I was hanging out in Hyde Park.
Okay.
But you know what I mean? But instead of wandering around being a hood rat and like being so high on drugs that I'm like flopping around in people's yards, I was like at a nice restaurant enjoying an Aperol spritz.
Yeah, that's growth.
I was out on the patio in my little J. Crew summer outfit, drinking an Aperol spritz in Hyde Park, and I was like, "Oh, wow!"
I'm a grown up.
If like 2012 Nick saw 2023 Nick, he'd be like, "What a chode!"
And you're like, but I know now that I am just a sophisticated witchy adult.
But I also am like, if 2023 Nick saw 2012 Nick, just blitzed shit on LSD wandering around through people's yards, I think I would still be delighted.
Yeah, how did we not get arrested? And then I remember that like 10 years ago, Austin was a lot more chill.
Yeah.
Not even 10,
Yeah.
like honestly, at this point, like 13 years ago, Austin.
No,
We're
well,
old.
I just remember that time that I was tripping so hard that we just like sat in Hyde Park in these people's yard and stared at their stained glass door.
Like you do.
And it's like, and it was, we were there for like over an hour. And it's like, surely there was people inside, like enjoying their dinner. Like, oh yeah, these people are high on acid, just staring at our door. I guess we'll wait for them to go away. Like we're fucking raccoons or something. Like,
Yeah, no, honestly, but you're right. I think there's something about having been that person because if someone did that like in my garden here in LA, at first I'd probably be like, huh. But then I'd be like, I'm just gonna let them go and see how this plays out.
no, right.
For me, I took a magical trip to Barnes and Noble. I know they're a big corporation, but whatever. I love bookstores and I live across the street from the Grove. And they had a double points day for Memorial Day weekend a couple of weeks ago. So whatever. I went and I found 2 books. The first book that makes me feel so seen, it's by Carrie Connor called Conjuring with Cannabis. And honestly, I adore this book. Also, Carrie Connor doesn't look like you might expect a woman who wrote a book about cannabis witchcraft to look, which I love even more.
Yeah,
Like,
she looks like a sweet aunt.
yeah, she looks like your sweet auntie. But it has like spells and rituals, like making magical bong water, making like using moon charged rubbing alcohol to clean your pipes and things. And honestly, like I love it. As a witch who doesn't drink, you know, I think I was talking with Nick about this, and I think 1-to-1 for like any sort of libations, like you can always use cannabis, but there's just so much focus on like magical wine and like pouring one out for the gods. And it's like, okay, but like, what about those of us who don't drink? And this book was like, I see you. And I just adore it. But the like really actually like super magical thing is, y'all know I've talked about Cindy Brandon's entering Hecate's garden on this podcast many times. Like I love Hecate. She's like one of the first goddesses that I feel like really reached out to me. And Cindy Brandon has this book that I knew about, but just hadn't ever come across and hadn't bought called Keeping Her Keys, it's an introduction to Hecate's modern witchcraft, but really the book is more of like a course. So it's meant to do like these lessons over 13 months and a day. So like a full year and a day. So I haven't started it yet because she suggests starting it on a new moon. And of course I bought it right before a fucking full moon because like, what is timing? But I'm really excited to do this. And then I was at the House of Intuition, this like cute little magic shop in LA with Eric. And then I found this journal after I had already picked up this book, and it has a fucking like gorgeous wolf howling at a full moon on the front of it. Like, but it's in leather. So it's not like weird 90s. It's like, you know, magical as fuck.
I also love the kind of like steampunky lock.
Oh yeah, it's got this gorgeous lock on it. And the back is like this really pretty like texture. And then when you unlock it, the paper inside, first of all, it's like that continues. Like, look at that fucking gilding on the leather. But then the inside is all like handmade paper. Like, and I got this journal to use for my year and a day doing Hecatean witchcraft. And it smells like fucking incense. And it was just like so great because I was like, I'm really excited to do this course. And I needed a new journal because I am a Virgo. And when they suggest a journal, I can't just use one of the journals that I've started for other things. I have to get a fresh journal.
And I'm sure that was so upsetting for you.
Yeah, you know, it was so upsetting. As I'm sitting here with my other like moon phases journal that I just use for my tarot notes, like y'all, I have so many journals. It is such a hilariously accurate stereotype for Virgos. But because I'd gotten off on my like journaling with my tarot, I'm like, my last entry from this was fucking July of last year. So y'all, this past year has been tough. I got to get back on it. But yeah, so that was like my magical book tour for the last like 2 weeks, which again, sometimes I'm such a Virgo, it makes me laugh at myself. But whatever, I love books. So, are you excited to talk about mushrooms though?
I am. I love when we get to do a little fungal moment.
Yeah. Me too. And this one's fun. So lion's mane. I feel like lion's mane is one of those mushrooms that's like really in right now. Like I feel like I see lion's mane everywhere. And culinary wise, it makes sense because it's like a bit more of a delicate mushroom texture. So often, like the most common way I've seen it in like nice restaurants is using lion's mane for like vegan seafood substitutes, like
Oh
in
yeah,
crab
like
dishes and stuff.
yeah. Well, you know, and I know we probably mention her every episode, so let's just keep it going. But Alexis Nicole, aka Black Forager, and Appalachian Forager both have lion's mane recipes that are kind of scallop medallion-y.
Yeah. The scallop medallions with it are super like popular. I found this cool recipe for like a faux crab salad using lion's mane. And one of the things that I'd kind of be interested to try is like a faux crab cake with lion's mane. Like I
Oh,
bet that would be dope because it
yeah.
cooks up really well. But let's talk about this delicious little fuzzy friend. So the common names: lion's mane, bear's head, monkey's head, comb tooth, bearded tooth mushroom, satyr's beard, bearded hedgehog, pom-pom mushroom, and bearded tooth fungus. So I do have to say that like mushrooms have much cooler common names than a lot of plants. Like they're wild. This one though, it's native to North America, Europe, China, and Japan. And what does it look like? Okay, so if you haven't seen a lion's mane mushroom, technically it's Hericium erinaceus. It's described as a pale white to light beige tooth fungi. So it naturally grows on dying wood in like forests, other like clumps of trees. And it tends to grow in like a single clump of dangling spines that then form these round mushroom bodies. So like there are some close relatives like coral mushrooms and stuff. But the big difference for those is that like the spines of lion's mane hang evenly in like a continuous clump instead of like a branched structure. So like the clumps of spines are typically between like 3 to 12 inches broad and tall. And the mushroom body is denser and the spines are shorter when they're young, but they couldn't get like the spines could get even like more than a centimeter in length once they're mature. And lion's mane doesn't have a stipe or like what you think of as like a mushroom stalk. Lion's manes don't have those, and there's not a distinct cap, quote unquote, and they always grow on wood. But the spore print of the lion's mane, it's white. So right, in particular, you're looking for like hardwood that's dying, things that are like dead oaks, walnuts, beeches, maples, even sycamores. But you can even find it on like dying ash, hornbeam, and poplars. But like really, like the oak, walnuts, those are the most common ones that you'll find it on. There are like a lot of species that do resemble lion's mane and can be mistaken for lion's mane, but only lion's mane forms like the dense globe, like inverted egg shape that it grows in, but it's not necessarily symmetrical. These like close relatives are going to have much more like irregular shapes, and they're like sparser or more spread out or have like an interrupted tooth arrangement. And they can also differ in color, right? So these other species are going to be like a darker beige, browns, like maybe even orange. And these species, they're edible when cooked, but the Hericium erinaceus is actually the one that like tastes the best more than anything. So the good news is there aren't necessarily lion's mane doppelgangers. They're going to try to kill you, but they're like not going to be as tasty. So yeah, it's always weird describing fungus because there's like such technical ways to think about them, but it's actually really, really important if you want to forage to get to know what those terms mean, because that's how you can tell the difference between different types of mushrooms. I also just have to say that the Japanese name for the lion's mane, Yamabushitaki, means those who sleep in the mountains. And that name comes from a garment that the hermit monks of the Shugendo sect of Buddhism wear. And it's like kind of a billowy, light robe type vibe. And that's like where their name for lion's mane comes from, which I think is super fun and had to throw that in there for you, Nicholas. So, as far as sustainability goes, for our English witches, it's considered rare and it's protected by the Wildlife and Countryside Act. It has, like, this mushroom's gained a lot of like widespread popularity in the last 10 years, but it's not extremely common to find in the wild. The fruiting body produces spores. So, like, the mushroom, if allowed to reproduce, can come back on the same tree year after year. But if you're trying to wildcraft for it somewhere where it's not protective, like, you really should let like one or even all of the fruiting bodies fully mature and just take like one at a time if there are several. That way it'll keep coming back because it's not one that's going to like spread all over the place. And you're not going to find it in like huge numbers at a time, but it can be cultivated. And like this is one of those where I'm like, foraging if you can, great. But honestly, like, it's more conscientious to purchase it from like growers or to cultivate it yourself rather than wildcrafting, just because it is so hard to find. It's not super common. It's not really widespread. Store-bought is actually better in this case, I would say. And there's some like really great mushroom growers I know in the United States where you can get it. I hate that Amazon bought Whole Foods, but Whole Foods, at least the one that I go to, does have some like really great like California and Oregon based mushroom producers that like they stock their mushrooms, and the lion's manes that I see there from like specifically, usually I see them from like the Oregon cultivators, always look gorgeous. But if you are going to harvest it yourself, this is one that it typically matures in like late summer or early fall. So it's like the wet weather and the chilly or chillier fall temperatures help encourage fruiting bodies. And then the fruiting bodies go from being like delicious and what they call choice for the market. It's like white, firm teeth, somewhat developed. And then to very mature, where it starts turning beige and gets a bit softer. And it's like the more mature fruiting bodies you can use as an herb and a food, but they're not going to really stand up to like transporting. So those are like, if you harvest them and they're more mature, you kind of got to eat them and go. But once the mushroom hits the point where it's like completely tan and dry and shriveled, like, it's not really going to be good for eating at that point. So again, as with any wild mushroom, if you do forage it, you need to inspect it for insects, because especially ones like lion's mane that have all those teeth, there are a lot of little hidey places for stuff to be in there that you maybe don't want to eat. But you can, once they're harvested, you can actually store them for like several days in the fridge, or you can slice and dry them to use in the future, or you can make tinctures with them. So mushroom foraging is like really dope. Just, you have to kind of like be well informed, know what you're looking for, and live somewhere where mushrooms grow, which not all of us do. I'm like, the mushrooms that grow near me are not edible, but they're cute. So, it's fine to buy mushrooms. Just don't feel like you have to forage them. Not everyone lives in the fucking Pacific Northwest. So that's that. Herbal uses. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. Nick's not a doctor. This podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any illnesses. Please always talk to your medical care professionals before you start any herbal regimens. Don't take medical advice from podcasts. So, a lot of the ways that like you see modern uses for this plant, they're really like informed by like traditional Chinese medicine and like Japanese folk medicine. So in terms of like the TCM perspective, the like quote that I've seen a lot says the plant strengthens the stomach, regulates qi, tonifies the spleen, promotes digestion, calms the shen, and strengthens the brain. So GI support is like a big recurring theme, especially in TCM with this. And the great news is it's like mushrooms, I think, number one, are much more popular in traditional Chinese medicine than they have historically been in Western medicine. Willow has the zoomies up and down the stairs. I'm really sorry if y'all can hear that in the background. So anyway, mushrooms are cool though for like GI issues because they're like really nutritive foods too. So it's not like a plant that you're just like eating just to make your stomach feel better. You can actually like, your body is going to enjoy it for more than one reason. So traditional uses basically are like, it has the potential to help repair and protect your GI tissue. Particularly, a lot of times you'll see it recommended for people with like stomach ulcers. And it's interesting that like Native Americans have been recorded as using like lion's mane as a styptic to help stop bleeding for like minor cuts and wounds. And I think that that's possibly like related basically to the idea that it's good for like stomach ulcers and like bleeding in the duodenum. So there's also a related species, coral hedgehog, that's been associated with folk use for stomach ulcers and as a digestive tonic. The coral hedgehog is like an American mushroom. There are also though like polysaccharides and peptides in lion's mane that help enhance your immune system. There's been a lot of recent research into lion's mane's inhibitory effects on cancers of the stomach and the esophagus. And there's actually a Japanese doctor, Dr. Mizuno, who isolated a group of constituents in the mushroom that are actually really effective against liver cancer cells. So there are more and more like ongoing research studies about lion's mane's ability to help inhibit cancer. But one of the big things there is it helps with like your immune function, right? Like a lot of immunomodulatory herbs and plants are the ones that end up getting research for cancer because it's really like helping your body help itself. So one of the other though, like big uses that you see for lion's mane, and I feel like this is the one, especially in the West, that gets touted, is like it's good for your cognition, right? Like it's good for your brain. And one of the big traditional uses in addition to GI stuff is as like a longevity tonic, because traditional Chinese medicine, Japanese folk medicine, they love longevity tonics. Clearly it works for them culturally because like we know that they're in those like blue zones where people live for a very, very long time. But they have actually done some research on lion's mane to help with like people that have things like Alzheimer's, other forms of dementia. And it does seem like there's really like promising effects when they've done research studies. And something interesting is that like the structural characteristics of lion's mane are so small that it's able to like more easily pass through the blood-brain barrier fully intact, which is something that a lot of things can't do. But it does help like with, you know, memory, cognition. And one of the main ways they think that works is because it helps actually support like decrease depression and anxiety. So you want to talk about things that are bad for your brain, depression and anxiety, like it's not good for you long term. And so they did this study with like 30 to 40-year-olds where there were 30 women who were all around like 40, 41. And the treatment groups either consumed like powdered lion's mane in 4 cookies for 4 weeks for a daily dose of like 2 grams of it, or placebo cookies. And then ratings on like a standardized scale of concentration, irritation, anxiousness, palpitations, and other like symptoms of mood and like the physical symptoms related to mood problems. The people in the group taking lion's mane rated like significantly better. So it's really good for helping like calm the brain, help with anxiety, help with depression. So no wonder it's a longevity tonic. We also know that like when people are elderly, especially in the West, because we like don't take care of our elders in general, isolation and depression and anxiety are very big problems. And now you have to have cultural support. Oh, hold on just a second. I got to go tell some kids to stop messing with some stuff. Hey, y'all don't mess with that cord, okay? It's attached to the lights. Thank you. Sorry, there were kids like trying to like mess with my solar panel for my back porch lights.
Can I just say you literally have like teacher voice.
Oh, thank you.
Like when you're speaking to children.
I mean, I have been working in an elementary school for almost a year now, so maybe I'm just picking it up. Anyway, so it's good for anxiety. It's good for depression. Lion's mane is tasty. You can put it in food. You can put it in tinctures. The magical uses are all like really closely associated to like healing and like mind health, inner peace. So monks and spiritual practitioners, one of the things that like has been recorded is essentially lion's mane can grant you the memory of a lion and nerves of steel. So I think that like magically it's like use it for helping enhance your psychic abilities, right? Like if you're able to bring about that sense of inner peace, I think any sort of psychic work, one of the things that gets the most in the way is like your own shit, right? It's like your own anxiety, second guessing yourself constantly. So I love the idea of like having, you know, tea with you while you're doing like meditations and psychic works. Pop some lion's mane tincture in that. Y'all also know I'm like drinking it right now. This is like my morning tincture blend. I have bacopa and motherwort and chamomile because my digestive system's been messed up because I'm, you know, constantly stressed. But add some like lion's mane tincture into like your morning bevies. Like I love making my morning, Eric calls them my concoctions, but they're like my herbal tincture blends that I put in with like coffee or tea, whatever I'm drinking in the morning. And I find it's like a really nice way to kind of get centered and kick the day off magically. It feels good to work with plants first thing in the morning. But yeah, when you need to find some like inner peace, get a nice cup of chamomile tea, put some lion's mane tincture in it. Or like honestly, at the end of the day, like do some kitchen magic. Like
well, and that's the cool thing about this one, because it is one of those things where it's like it has real medical and magical benefits.
yeah.
But it's also tasty.
Oh my God, isn't that great? Like we don't always get that, y'all. As someone, I'm literally drinking a bacopa tincture. As an herbalist, I cannot drink bacopa tea because it is so bitter. I can't.
Well, and it's also, I mean, with a lot of the herbs and stuff, you wouldn't eat a salad made of lemon balm.
No, you wouldn't eat nettles, stinging nettles in a
No.
salad. Like
So
you're
it's
not eating
so
raw.
it's like we're not always getting dinner out of it. But
Yeah,
with this
we
one
can
you
get
can
dinner.
but with this one you can get dinner out of it.
And you can make a great dinner for your vegan friends. And how nice is that?
That is and yeah, I mean, I've eaten some lion's mane dishes and I'm a fan.
It's dope. So I used a bunch of websites today, primarily like the herbarium. There are a few like different vendors who sell lion's mane that had a lot to say about what monks thought about them, which was funny because I'm like 99% of this I'm sure is bullshit. Because you know how in the West we love to talk about what monks like as if they're somehow an authority on things, and it's like they're just dudes. They're dudes in the mountains, but they're just dudes.
They're dudes in the mountains.
In the mountains. So they're smart, but like, you know, I don't know. There's this weird reverence for Buddhist monks in the West, and I'm like mad respect, but like they're not like deities. Like that
Right.
is, it's weird to treat them as like end all be all. Like, well, if it's good enough for the monks, it's like, yeah, well, I also don't want to wear billowy garments and like give up all my material possessions. So,
Oh, you know what though? It's the billowy garments for me. Like,
I mean, yes, but I'm also like, what am I going to do without leggings and a baggy sweatshirt?
that's fair.
That is the Shannon way. As I'm wearing my Totoro sweatshirt over like, I'm literally right now, hilariously enough, wearing like a one piece like jumper of essentially leggings material under a Totoro sweater. So, that's my life. But yeah, that's lion's mane. I mean, it's like kind of sweet and short. I think with mushrooms, it's like there's less, I feel like, focus on the magical benefits of mushrooms, but like let's change that. I love mushrooms, and not just magical mushrooms. Like, you don't have to trip balls on mushrooms to like work with them for magic.
Exactly, y'all. But also, I would say there is something that's just very like hobbity about mushrooms, and there's always cool folklore around it.
Oh yeah.
It's just like it's there. Like all the elements are there.
Yeah, it's super fun, and like there's just something so fucking magical about the way mushrooms grow.
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
Anyway, but yeah, so it's lion's mane.
Well, do we want to do little baby asks before I talk about Gemini, or?
Yeah, rate, review, subscribe, y'all. Thanks for hanging with us while we go bi-weekly for the summer. I think it's going to be good for us, and hopefully it'll be good for the
Hey,
listeners.
it is Pride Month, and we have Bi Pride.
Yeah, bi Pride faux life. Promote bi visibility. We're not bi now, gay later, or just hetero people in disguise. We're here. We're queer. We're hiding in plain sight.
And we record every other week.
And if you're mad about it, that's a hate crime. So we don't make the rules. Sorry.
Well, also, I'm working 11 days in a row because I'm literally going to Japan in like 11 weeks. So,
yeah, I hit double time pay multiple times in my last pay period because I've been working such long hours. We're tired, y'all.
But all of that to say, all right. So I do feel that there's a certain amount of appropriateness to recording Gemini. A little bit hungover from the wine last night.
That feels correct.
A little bit hungover from the wine last night. Maybe I got into my poppers. Maybe I didn't. But I'm feeling a little unhinged, and I think that's very Gemini. So
it is. It is.
And I do have
I love Gemini.
I have my little beverage that's just for fun.
Ooh, you're for fun, baby. I added some chocolate cold brew to my coffee this morning with my regular cold brew, so I'm like having a homemade mocha.
Love that. Okay, but actually before we talk about Gemini, we're going to talk about drinks because I just bought the biggest bag of just raw hibiscus. And I'm working on a sun tea blend.
Ooh. Yum.
So let me know if you have any ideas for what would be good in that.
I mean, I love lemon balm and a sun tea.
Yeah, I think it's got to be something citrusy because I'm like, I think I want something citrusy and then some mint.
I like that.
Because
if you're doing hydrangea though, something that might be fun is like a more mild minty flavor. Like you could almost do like a catnip, like a fresh catnip in there.
Oh, sure. Well, no, I want it to be pretty minty because honestly, it's like the tartness of the hibiscus. I think would drown out. Anyway, but we're talking about Geminis, and I actually up top we're going to start with the bad news. All right, so Geminis are responsible for both Donald Trump and Jeffrey Dahmer.
I think isn't Gemini one of the more common serial killer signs too?
It is. So Son of Sam also was a Gemini.
And isn't he the one who said that a dog told him to murder people?
I think that's the one. I do believe that's the one.
I've been like rusty on my true crime stuff. But yeah, I'm like, that is a very big Gemini mood.
But yeah, there's there's a lot of serial killers around the world that are Geminis. It's like
Yeah.
the second most common one after Sagittarius, apparently. Weirdly enough, Gemini's sister sign. What is going on along that axis?
And I have to say, that axis, Nick and I, our midheavens and our ICs are sister signs in Sagittarius and Gemini. So it cuts through the middle of our charts.
Truly, truly. Um,
Speaking of being unhinged.
Speaking of being unhinged. But also, okay, Gemini though, let's get into it. So the other Mercury sign, the other one being Virgo, but they're the air Mercury sign. And I think Gemini is what I imagine an air sign is.
Yeah. And I think that when you think about Mercury in it, it's like Gemini, I think, embodies the part of Mercury that doesn't fucking stay still in the sky.
Right.
Which is like both their strength and the thing that I think as a Virgo, I've talked about this. My theory is that people that have like people who's one of their big three is ruled by a planet with another sign, in my experience, sometimes tend to like struggle in relationships with people in the other sign represented by that planet. So like I know I struggle with Geminis, and when I've done my deep research, I like an inner work, I really think it's because like the way that the mercurialness of them is so different than my mercurial representation, it feels like clashy.
They're very different. They're very different. I honestly think, Earth really, I mean, obviously, cliche, but it's a very grounding influence on Mercury, which is very chaotic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you get that chaos and then the air, there's nothing holding them back. And
it feels like it's a much more external representation of that chaos with Gemini, as opposed to the more internal chaos with Virgos.
Well, and Gemini is ruler of the throat chakra, which is why they will not shut the fuck up. But no, it's like they're living that Mercury lifestyle.
Yeah.
No filter. I think Virgo like is very filtered and very measured with how they interact with the world. But like Gemini, it is stream of consciousness. It is another famous Gemini, Kanye West. It's Kanye West's Twitter.
Yeah.
That's the most Gemini shit there is. Like Kanye West's Twitter. Any Gemini's Twitter. Fucking Donald Trump's Twitter was in that batshit insane.
And contradict that with someone like Beyonce, who's like notoriously private, but a Virgo.
Right.
It is like the extremes of it.
It's truly the extremes. Well, and here's, one thing I did want to say in this segment that I think really is so Gemini is that Gemini does have this mercurial power to take on everything you're saying without passing some sort of moralistic judgment on it, which is where I think the Virgo comes in. Because if we really want to dive into it, because we talked about this a bit with Aries and Taurus, where it's kind of like, what do I see as like their strength in the community? I think Geminis are like mediators. And that's like what I see them as, because they're able to blend in with so many different kinds of people. Almost kind of like neutral ground. Like, you could, it's like, I know Geminis do rub some people the wrong way, and like myself included, but it is very like, they would make great mediators because they're not passing this moral judgment.
Yeah, and I feel like Gemini also has this like very kind of jack of all trades in a good way type vibe, right? It's like very like varied interests. They don't necessarily dig down deep in one thing, which is okay though. It's like that's what makes, I think, Gemini sometimes a very creative sign as well, because they're people that kind of like get really interested in something for a bit and then they kind of jump. It's almost like a bit ADHD, but I think that in some ways that can be like a really cool like creative outlet for them.
Well, and there's a lot
don't-
of great Gemini actors, and I feel like if any job is kind of doing every job, it's acting. Like,
Oh yeah. And it's great. Like I think that I really am jealous of some of the ways that like Gemini does have that ability to kind of like do a little bit of everything and be a bit more like uninhibited with it than some people.
oh yeah, well yeah, I mean, it's like really some acting greats like Morgan Freeman, Gemini, freaking for the Marvel fans out there, Chris Evans and Tom Holland.
Yeah. I mean, Cillian
Gemini.
Murphy.
Yeah, Johnny Depp and Natalie Portman, Geminis. Miss Angelina Jolie, absolutely a Gemini. Colin Farrell. Also, a lot of great singers on here. Idina Menzel,
Gotta love her.
Bob Dylan.
That makes sense to me.
Prince,
Ooh,
Paul McCartney,
y'all got some heavy hitters, Gemini.
fucking Kendrick Lamar.
But and they're such like these are people that aren't just musicians. They're also like very like groundbreaking.
They're like genre defining artists. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think again, like that creative seed there with that ability to like move quickly, process a lot of ideas. I mean, look at the fucking discography of Bob Dylan, and that's Gemini.
And that's on Gemini.
It's like decades and decades and decades and decades of music that spans all over the fucking place. Like, but he's great at it.
Truly. Well, and here's something else we have to talk about the horniness of Geminis.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because
they're horny people.
Because Marilyn Monroe and JFK were both Geminis.
Arguably two sex symbols on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Very much so. And, rocking the literal world when they had their affair.
Yeah.
But also, I think Marilyn Monroe being a sex symbol and not liking it in many ways is very Gemini. It's like
the begrudging sex symbol.
The begrudging sex symbol.
It's like Cillian Murphy being confused as to why people have a crush on him.
It's like, are you kidding me? Have you seen a mirror?
Yeah, but it is like that's such a Gemini thing. Like, I love it. I do love that about them.
No, because it's kind of like, oh, little old me. Ooh,
me?
It's so funny because I'm like reading this list, and one of the top Google searches about Gemini is why are there so many famous Geminis? Which we love.
It's because they're creative and beautiful.
It's because they're creative.
Sometimes we hate them for it, and that's okay.
Ian McKellen, for fuck's sake, Ian McKellen.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, we get it, Geminis. We
get it. We get it. But no, I do feel like there is glamour to Geminis, but they are horny people. And no offense, but especially Gemini men.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say, I've never met a Gemini man that I could like be actual long-term friends with. I've tried. Uh it is a challenge.
Well, it's just one of those things where it's like love them, love the energy. My mom's a Gemini, right?
Yeah.
Um
I have to say, Geminis, I think, are some of the biggest flirts that I've ever met. They tend to be very like they're the people that are super flirty, but don't necessarily think of themselves as flirty.
don't think of themselves as flirty, but will act on it because
Yeah.
okay. And here's the tea. Here's the tea. This is our podcast. These are hot takes. But I have known a lot of Geminis who cheat.
Yeah.
Known a
Yeah.
lot of Geminis who cheat. And I don't know what that is about. Okay. But it's one of those things where it's like sorry that it's true, but I think that's why we should talk about it.
I mean, speaking of JFK.
I truly, truly. No, because it's like the mind games of it all. And that goes back to Mercury. The mind games of it all, like everything has to be gamified for Geminis, like which is it's kind of toxic. I mean, I'm not saying all Geminis are toxic, and I'm not even saying all Geminis exhibit these traits, but Geminis
But it's a shadow side to Gemini.
but Gemini cheats, or at the very least has trouble controlling their wandering eye.
Yeah, it moves too fast. They can't catch it in time to control it.
Which is one of those things where it's like, y'all should stop living up to that particular hype. Be good for your reputations, even. But no, I do love that air quality, though. It's like Geminis are fun to hang out with. Geminis are absolutely fun to hang out with.
They're exhausting for me. I find that I can appreciate Geminis in small doses, but again, it's that very like earthy side of me. But then I feel like the fiery side of me sometimes like it's that like the most fucking frustrated I have been with people has been with a couple of Geminis I know, where I'm like, if I could set you on fire with my eyes right now, I fucking would.
Oh, sure, sure, sure. But
Because when they're great, they're great. And when they're not, Jesus Christ, they don't stop not being.
no, well, and then it's all about the duality, right?
Yeah. You don't know. It's like it's great because they're like a strong, well-adjusted Gemini, I think has like a beautiful complexity to them.
Mm-hmm.
But a Gemini that still needs therapy doesn't know what they want.
I mean, just look at Angelina Jolie's life, right?
Yeah.
That's some big fucking Gemini energy right there.
Yeah.
Um,
Who
no,
like what other sign is gonna fucking like make out with their brother on a red carpet?
truly, yeah, that's absolutely some unhinged Gemini shit.
Yeah. They're
With, like,
wonderful and scary.
wonderful and scary. Yeah, it's like wearing the vial of Billy Bob Thornton's blood.
That's a Gemini move.
That's absolutely.
People would be like, "Oh, that's Scorpio." I'm like, "No, no, no. No, that level of unhinged is Gemini." Scorpios like to think they're more unhinged than they are. There aren't a lot of Scorpio serial killers. I'm so sorry, y'all.
No, because Scorpio goes home and turns into Taurus.
Yeah.
They like take off their goth makeup and they become a Taurus.
Yeah. And it's fine. We love that about you, but you're not the scary ones. It's like, sure, you come about during spooky season, but like Geminis scare me.
Right. Yeah, the real spooky season is
Is Gemini season. And I think it's like when you think about the weather too, there is that thing. I read this like great psychology article when I was in college about also the like nature versus nurture, looking at the nature theory of like this evolution of like astrological signs and thinking about like the way that like your first year of life is experienced. Gemini is one of those like signs where you're born on this like period of really crazy, tumultuous change. Like, what season do we have the most like crazy fucking storms and weather events and like tornadoes and like spring terrible thunderstorms and weird hot and cold snaps? It's like the weather alone in June is all over the place.
I actually think that's such a valid point too, because it's literally like last cold snap of the year, first 100-degree day, like
Maybe a tornado,
maybe a
maybe a
tornado.
crazy hailstorm. It's like, can you imagine if you're born and that's just what you think the world is? Like that level of chaos?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no wonder.
Yeah, no. Um, but yeah, no, I do. I see Geminis very much as like mediators in the community. I feel like they're good improvisers.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, if I was going to get pulled over by a cop with a bunch of drugs in my car, I'd like to have a Gemini on my team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you want a Gemini on your defense team.
Yeah,
Um
100%. And Nick, like I would love for you to maybe talk a little bit about having like Gemini as your midheaven because I think midheaven is like a part of your chart that people sleep on. But
oh,
some people call it your destiny line.
well, I do kind of feel that in, you know, in my life of like wanting to do a little bit of everything. It's like I want to travel, but it's great. It's having a million very niche interests. Not that
Yeah.
traveling is a niche interest, but like nothing really adds up to like um one thing.
I love that. And I think it makes sense, right? Because it's like the way that I love the way Chani actually describes. So for me, because our midheaven icy lines are like in opposition, basically Gemini is like the basement of my chart. And the way she describes it, I love it. It's like with the IC and Gemini, your root cellar is packed with books, papers, filing cabinets, and maybe a rotary dial telephone. And I see that in your midheaven and I see that in my like root cellar. And I feel like that's kind of like the wonderful thing about Gemini, right? It's like these varied interests, being able to be really smart in a lot of areas too. Like, and it can be used for good or evil. You could
It
be Son of
can
Sam,
be, yeah,
but
exactly.
you could also like help start the idea of like fucking the Civil Rights Act. Like, thanks LBJ for actually making that happen because JFK was a wonderful orator. Horrible politician. He didn't know how to fucking work the system, but he had great ideas and he inspired a nation for better or for worse. And he also managed to be like one of the first big Catholic presidents. Like, that was a huge deal at the time because people are like, oh, is he going to serve the US or is he going to serve the Pope? Despite the fact that now everyone's like, oh, whatever, you love Jesus, cool. But I think that is like the beauty of Gemini is like, again, it's like this ability to be so good at a bunch of stuff too.
Yeah, no, and I do feel like that's the Gemini spirit of like of having Gemini on my midheaven. Well, because it's like working in the service industry too. It's like especially as I've been bartending more, it's like, because you're a therapist, right? But you're
Yeah.
also like fixing the dishwasher and shit. And you're also like memorizing cocktails and like where the different wines and stuff come from. And also, like, being cute.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a
Like,
lot of pressure, but you do it flawlessly.
but also, it's like really any service industry job is like 20 different jobs. It's like just depends on the fucking day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But everyone's got to eat, so you do end up talking to literally everyone, and that feels very Gemini.
Yeah. I mean, it is like Gemini with like Mercury as the messenger. I feel like Gemini is much more communicative than
Mm-mm.
the other Mercury sign, Virgo. Um, I think that that's one of the things, like, again, I know we've talked about JFK a lot, but I think about his like talents as an orator. And I think a lot of that is still his Gemini, right? Because it's like he wasn't necessarily good at making stuff happen, but he
But
was
he
very
could talk you into
inspirational.
it. He could talk you into it.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing that makes them such great actors, right? Is like they can be so convincing. It's like a Gemini is like a great hype man.
Absolutely. Well, and to bring it back, Queen Victoria was a Gemini.
That tracks.
Just, and now everyone talks about the Victorian era. It's such a famous era.
Yeah. I mean, the Victorian era, it's like you even get old Victorian houses as like a thing that people know about in the US, even though Queen Victoria was clearly not.
Yeah, we don't have a queen here,
We don't have a queen, but we have Victorian era things
but we
in the
have
United
Victorian
States,
era things. Yeah.
which I mean, it's like that, I think is pretty indicative of her influence.
Yeah, if like other countries are like marking their eras around your reign,
Kind of a big deal.
kind of a big deal.
Just like Geminis. Geminis are kind of a big deal. And
Geminis are
again,
kind of a big deal.
that's I think why they're so scary sometimes, because it's like with great power comes great
Yeah,
responsibility. And
yeah.
some of them become JFK and some of them become Son of Sam.
And some of them
So,
become Donald J. Trump.
and fuck him forever. But oh my
I'm
god,
s- I,
how many charges are going against him right now? Because
no, it's so great. But I'm sorry. It's like if Taurus has to take credit for Hitler, Gemini's got to own Donald Trump.
that's true. I mean, again, there's always a shadow side.
That's
And
y'all. That's
that's
your
all shadow side.
that's y'all. That's your man. So
Out and off fucking constantly. The word vomit that never ends.
the 4 a.m. tweets.
Yeah, Gemini, learn
Although,
from
okay, love him or hopefully hate him, but Donald Trump's tweets are A plus 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 tweets.
Oh yeah, because they're so unhinged.
Like him calling Ron DeSantis, first of all, Ron DeSanctimonious,
One of my favorites. I do have
and
to.
also Meatball Ron.
Meatball Ron is like such a like fucking petty schoolyard nickname.
It's like, what the hell is this? Why is it so funny? And also, if someone called me Meatball Nick, I would be like, okay,
You're
is
like,
that
all right. I mean, weird, but I'll
it's
go with
like I'm
it.
not like especially offended by it.
No, it's like a goofy insult.
But okay, so I do have a hard out here in a minute. So I drew 2 cards for Gemini.
Oh, that makes sense.
Doesn't that make sense?
I love
So
that.
I also like cut the deck and I saw these 2 cards and I was like, that's the pull.
Yeah.
That's the pull. So I have the Chariot,
Very Gemini mood.
very Gemini mood. Followed by the Page of Coins.
Ooh.
Which would be, the Page of Pentacles in other decks. It really depends on which one, doesn't it? But so this, I think, is a sign. It's good, it's good news. It's basically like you're obviously like a financial or career opportunity. And it's kind of saying go for it.
Yeah. I
Which
like
I
that.
which I love for y'all during your season. Like that's
Lean into the chaos that is you.
like lean into the chaos that is you. And it's going to be fruitful for you, which is it's so nice. It's probably so nice to like have that energy during your season.
I think so.
Like I will say this year my season was a little bit meh, but um it was like it wasn't bad, but I wasn't having chariot vibes for fuck's sake. But
Yeah.
also
Congrats.
I do love this chariot card though, which is kind of giving me extra Gemini vibes because it's the dragon tarot and it's like two dragons pulling a dragon.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like the duality of like, it's sort of like Goofy and Pluto and Disney. It's like so this dog's a person, but this dog's a dog.
Yeah. I'm like, Gemini, are you the one in the chariot or the one pulling the chariot? Or are you both?
Somehow both.
I love it. I love it.
So what do we say to all our, coin flip two-faced Gemini bitches?
To all you two-faced, but still so talented bitches. Blessed be bitches.
Blessed be bitches.
Goodbye.
Bye now.